Hello viewers, welcome to my channel online biology tutorials. In today's live, we will be reading chapter 6 Control and Coordination of class 10 Science NCERT that is followed in the CBSE board. I hope the screen is clear. In case you are interested in hearing the audio of first 5 chapters, a playlist without background music has already been uploaded. So let's get started with the reading of chapter 6 Control and Coordination. In the previous chapter, we looked at life processes involved in the maintenance functions in living organisms. There, we had started with the notion we all have that if we see something moving, it is alive. Some of these movements are, in fact, the result of growth, as in plants. A seed germinates and grows, and we can see that the seedling moves over the course of a few days. It pushes soil aside and comes out. But if its growth were to be stopped, these movements would not happen. Some movements, as in many animals and some plants, are not connected with growth. A cat running, children playing on swings, buffaloes chewing cud. These are not movements caused by growth. Why do we associate such visible movements with life? A possible answer is that we think of movement as a response to a change in the environment of the organism. The cat may be running because it has seen a mouse. Not only that, we also think of movement as an attempt by living organisms to use changes in their environment to their advantage. Plant grows out into the sunshine. Children try to get pleasure and fun out of swinging. Buffaloes chew cud to help break up tough food so as to be able to digest it better. When bright light is focused on our eyes or when we touch a hot object, we detect the change and respond to it with movement in order to protect ourselves. If we think a bit more about this, it becomes apparent that all this movement in response to the environment is carefully controlled. Each kind of a change in the environment evokes an appropriate movement in response. When we want to talk to our friends in class, we whisper rather than shouting loudly. Clearly, the movement to be made depends on the event that is triggering it. Therefore, such controlled movement must be connected to the recognition of various events in the environment, followed by only the correct movement in response. In other words, living organisms must use systems providing control and coordination. In keeping with the general principles of body organization, in multicellular organisms, specialized tissues are used to provide these control and coordination activities. 6.1 Animals' Nervous System. In animals, such control and coordination are provided by nervous and muscular tissues, which we have studied in class 9th. Touching a hot, next page, object is an urgent and dangerous situation for us. We need to detect it and respond to it. How do we detect that we are touching a hot object? All information from our environment is detected by the specialized tips of some nerve cells. These receptors are usually located in our sense organs, such as the inner ear, the nose, the tongue, and so on. So, gustatory receptors will detect taste, while olfactory receptors will detect smell. This information acquired at the end of the dendritic tip of a nerve cell, which is shown to you in figure 6.1a, means this one, sets off a chemical reaction that creates an electrical impulse. This impulse travels from the dendrite to the cell body and then along the axon to its end. At the end of the axon, the electrical impulse set off the release of some chemicals. These chemicals cross the gap or synapse and start a similar electrical impulse in a dendrite of the next neuron. This is a general scheme of how nervous impulses travels in the body. A similar synapse finally allows delivery of such impulses from neurons to other cells, such as muscle cells or glands, shown to you in B here and a diagram ahead. It is Thus, no surprise that nervous tissue is made up of an organized network of nerve cells or neurons and is specialized for conducting information via electrical impulses from one part of the body to another. Look at figure 6.1a and identify the part of neuron where information is acquired and through which information travels in an electrical impulse. And three, where is this impulse being converted in the chemical signal from onward transmission. So this is the dendrite part. This will be receiving the information and the information will be traveling as an electrical impulse from dendrite to dendron to cyton to axon, and then it will pass on further. So chemical synapse will be here at the end when this neuron is going to end. Shortly, I will be starting with the explanatory videos of the chapter, so it will help you in understanding the concept. Activity 6.1. Put some sugar in your mouth. How does it taste? Block your nose by pressing it between your thumb and index finger. Now eat sugar again. Is there any difference in its taste? While eating lunch, block your nose in the same way and notice if you can fully appreciate the taste of the food you are eating. Is there a difference in how sugar and food taste if your nose is blocked? If so, why might this be happening? Read and talk about possible explanations for these kind of differences. Do you come across a similar situation when you have a cold? Next page. Thank you, Ayush, for joining the live. 6.1.1. What happens in reflex actions? Reflex is a word we use very commonly when we talk about some sudden action in response to something in the environment. We say, I jumped out of the way of the bus reflexly, or I pulled my hand back from the flame reflexly, or I was so hungry my mouth started watering reflexly. What exactly do we mean? A common idea in all such examples is that we do something without thinking about it or without feeling in control of our reactions. Yet these are situations where we are responding with some action to changes in our environment. How is control and coordination achieved in such situations? Let us consider this further. Take one of our examples. Touching a flame is an urgent and dangerous situation for us, or in fact for any animal. How would we respond to this? One seemingly simple way is to think consciously about the pain and the possibility of getting burned and therefore move our hand. An important question then is, how long will it take us to think all this? The answer depends on how we think. If nerve impulses are sent around the way we have talked about earlier, then thinking is also likely to involve the creation of such impulses. Thinking is a complex activity, so it is bound to involve a complicated interaction of many nerve impulses from many neurons. If this is the case, it is no surprise that the thinking tissue in our body consists of dense networks of intricately arranged neurons. It sits in the forward end of the skull and receives signals from all over the body, which it thinks about before responding to them. Obviously, in order to receive these signals, this thinking part of the brain in the skull must be connected to nerves coming from various parts of the body. Similarly, if this part of the brain is to instruct muscles to move, nerves must carry this signal back to different parts of the body. If all of this is to be done when we touch a hot object, it may take enough time for us to get burned. That is why, because this action has to be taken quickly, that is why only spinal cord helps with a very little part of brain in it. The thinking part of the brain will not be taken when reflex action will happen, because otherwise we may get burnt. How does the design of the body solve this problem rather than having to think about the sensation of heat? If the nerves that detect heat were to be connected to the nerves that move muscles in a simpler way, the process of detecting the signal or the input and responding to it by an output action might be completed quickly. Such a connection is called a reflex arc, where should such reflex arc connections be made between the input nerve and the output nerve? The best place, of course, would be at the point where they first meet each other. Nerves from all over the body meet in a bundle in the spinal cord on their way to the brain. Reflex arcs are formed in this spinal cord itself, although the information input also goes on to reach the brain. Of course, reflex arcs have evolved in animals because the thinking process of the brain is not fast enough. In fact, many animals have very little or none of the complex neuron network needed for thinking. So it is quite likely that reflex arcs have evolved as efficient ways of functioning in the absence of true thought processes. However, even after complex neuron networks have come into existence, reflex arcs continue to be more efficient for quick responses. So this is the diagram of reflex arc, which you should definitely prepare. Reflex arc is the pathway of reflex action. So it includes basically the stimulus, the neuron that is passing sensory neuron, which is carrying the information from the receptor to the spinal cord. Then relay neuron is also its part, motor neuron is also its part, and the last part is the effector, which receives the information. So it is generally a muscle or a spinal cord. This question comes in board examination, so definitely go ahead. Writing and practicing should be done. 6.1.2 Human brain. Is reflex action the only function of the spinal cord? Obviously not. Since we know that we are thinking beings, the spinal cord is made up of nerves which supply information to think about. Thinking involves more complex mechanisms and neural connections. These are concentrated in the brain, which is the main coordinating center of the body. The brain and the spinal cord constitute the central nervous system, figure 6.3. They receive information from all the parts of the body and integrate it. We also think about our actions like writing, talking, moving a chair, clapping at the end of a program are examples of all the voluntary actions which are based on deciding what to do next. So the brain also has to send messages to the muscles. This is the second way in which the nervous system communicates with the muscles. The communication between the central nervous system and the other parts of the body is facilitated by the peripheral nervous system, consisting of cranial nerves arising from the brain and spinal nerves arising from the spinal cord. The brain thus allows us to think and take actions based on that thinking. As you will expect, this is accomplished through a complex design with different parts of the brain responsible for integrating different inputs and outputs. The brain has three major parts or regions, namely the forebrain, midbrain, and the hindbrain. The bottommost paragraph, the forebrain is the main thinking part of the brain. It has regions which receive sensory impulses from various receptors. Separate areas of the forebrain are specialized for hearing, smell, sight, and so on. There are separate areas of association where this sensory information is interpreted by putting it together with information from other receptors as well as with information that is already stored in the brain based on. Next page. All this, a decision is made about how to respond, and the information is passed on to the motor areas which control the movement of voluntary muscles. For example, our leg muscles. However, certain sensations are distinct from seeing or hearing. For example, how do we know that we have eaten enough? The sensation of feeling full is because of a center associated with hunger, which is in a separate part of our forebrain. This diagram, human brain, is important. How many labels are given? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. You need to learn all the labels. You will not be asked to draw the diagram, but definitely a question can come where a figure will be there. They might ask you which part of the brain is largest in size. So you need to mark cerebrum. In case a question comes, which part of the body maintains the permanent balance? So here you need to mark cerebellum. Don't be overconfident. See all the parts carefully. So this uh, part which is showing you the downs and the ups means the gyri and sulci. So gyri are the depressions, right? So the wave-like structure which is there, this is cerebrum. This is your forehead, that is the forebrain of yours. So cerebrum outside it is protected by cranium, which is also known as a skull. Here, meninges is not shown to you. Just inner to the skull, you also are required to learn meninges, which contains cerebrospinal fluid. This cerebrospinal fluid, which is just outside the brain, it contains cerebrospinal fluid. So, meninges contains CSF or cerebrospinal fluid, which actually is the shock absorbing one. Means it if you get hit suddenly to something, this is one thing that will absorb all the shock and your brain will be protected. So also remember pons, medulla and spinal cord, they are in one line. First pons, then medulla, then spinal cord. Cerebellum is on the other side. However, these three are the parts of hindbrain. So this is midbrain, this is hypothalamus, and just beneath the hypothalamus, pituitary. All the labels should be learned from NCRT. So this is, as I told, it is the forebrain, means your forehead part. So this is your forehead part and this is the back part of your brain. This is the part which is a spinal cord, and spinal cord is present inside the vertebral column. Study the label diagram of a human brain. We have seen that different parts have different or specific functions. Can we find out the function of each part? Let us look at the other use of the word reflex as we have talked about in the introduction. Our mouth waters when we see food we like without our meaning to. Our hearts beat without our thinking about it. In fact, we cannot control these actions easily by thinking about them, even if we wanted to. Do we have to think about or remember to breathe or digest food? So, in between the simple reflex actions like change in the size of the pupil, and the thought out actions such as moving a chair, there is another set of muscle movements over which we do not have any thinking control. Many of these involuntary actions are controlled by the midbrain and the hindbrain. All these involuntary actions, including the blood pressure, salivation, vomiting, are controlled by medulla in the hindbrain. All the examples which NCRT has given you, right? These are to be done properly. MCQs can come based on it. Think about activities like walking in a straight line, riding a bicycle, picking up a pencil. These are all possible due to a part of the hindbrain called the cerebellum. It is responsible for precision of voluntary actions and maintaining the posture and balance of the body. Imagine what would happen if each of these events failed to take place if we were not thinking about it. You should also prepare a question of differentiation between the cerebrum, this part, and cerebellum. At least 2 points you should know. So, one, cerebrum is a part of forebrain. This is a part of hindbrain. You should write for cerebrum. This is mainly connected to memory, thinking, intelligence of the person. So basically, all the voluntary activities are under the control of cerebrum. It is the largest part of the forebrain. In case of cerebellum, you need to write that this controls the balance of the body. So the permanent balance of the human body is because of this. You can also write examples as they have written here. Three examples are given: walking in a straight line, riding a bicycle, picking up a pencil. So this all comes in the example of cerebellum, right? But if I ask you a question and you are answering it, that means you are going to think and then you will be answering. So this is a part of cerebrum. Joshna, Leo, hi. Thank you for joining the live. We are just reading Control and Coordination. 6.1.3, How are tissues protected? A delicate organ like the brain, which is so important for the variety of activities, needs to be carefully protected. For this, the body is designed so that the brain sits inside a bony box. Inside the box, the brain is contained in a fluid filled balloon which provides further shock absorption. If you run your hand down it, the middle of your back, you will feel a hard, bumpy structure. This is the vertebral column or the backbone, which protects the spinal cord. Excuse me. Pooja Devi, hello. Thank you for joining the live. 6.1.4, How does the nervous tissue cause action? So far, we have been talking about nervous tissue and how it collects information, send It around the body, processes information, makes decision based on information, and conveys decision to muscles for action. In other words, when the action or movement is to be performed, muscle tissue will do the final job. How do animal muscles move? When a nerve impulse reaches the muscle fiber must move. How does a muscle cell move? The simple notion of movement at the cellular level is that muscle cells will move by changing their shapes so that they shorten. So the next question is, how do muscle cells change their shape? The answer must lie in the chemistry of the cellular components. Muscle cells have special proteins that change both their shape and their arrangement in the cell in response to nervous electrical impulses. When this happens, new arrangements of these proteins give the muscle cells a shorter form. Remember, when we talked about muscle tissue in class 9, there were different kinds of muscles, such as voluntary muscles and involuntary muscles. Based on what we have discussed so far, what do you think the differences between these would be? In text question. Pooja Devi, this is actually the audio of chapter 6, Control and Coordination. In case you are interested in hearing the explanatory videos, shortly I will be doing the live. So you can subscribe so that a notification will come to you and you can join it. In that video, I will be explaining in detail all the questions that you get in board and the diagram that I have explained just few minutes ago. In text question 1, what is the difference between a reflex action and walking? What happens at the synapse between two neurons? Which part of the brain maintains posture and equilibrium of the body? How do we detect the smell of an agarbatti or incense stick? What is the role of the brain in reflex action? 6.2, coordination in plants. I can see that 5 students are watching live. May I know from which city you are watching this live? Animals have a nervous system for controlling and coordinating the activities of the body, but plants have neither a nervous system and muscles. So, how do they respond to stimuli? When we touch the leaves of a chui mui, the sensitive or touch me not plant of the mimosa family, they begin to fold up and drop. T. Sai Swaroop. Welcome, Pooja Devi Bihar. Bro, Parlo, Ghaziabad. Nice name. So I will be starting explanatory video live around this time only within a couple of days. If you feel like, you can subscribe to my channel. I have already recorded the explanatory videos of live processes. You can see if that seems helpful, you can subscribe. If not helpful, you can just watch and enjoy. The sensitive or touch me not plant of the mimosa family, they begin to fold up and droop. When a seed germinates, the root goes down, the stem comes up into the air. What happens? Firstly, the leaf of the sensitive plant move very quickly in response to touch. Next page, please. Here they are talking about the movements. Ultra Subha Uriya. Okay, welcome to my channel. So here we are talking about tropic and the nastic movements in the plants. There is no growth involved in this movement. On the other hand, the directional movement of a seedling is caused by growth. If it is prevented from growing, it will not show any movement. So plants show two different types of movement, one dependent on growth and the other independent of growth. 6.2.1, Immediate response to stimulus. Let us think about the first kind of movement, such as that of the sensitive plant. Since no growth is involved, the plant must actually move its leaves in response to touch. But there is no nervous tissue nor any muscle tissue. How does the plant detect the touch, and how do the leaves move in response? So this is Mimosa pudica, which is being shown to you. The image is also important. In case a image-based question comes in the board examination, you will be asked to identify the movement. So this is thigmonasty. Okay, remember this is nastic movement in response to touch. So I will be explaining in the explanatory videos how this is thigmonasty. If we think about where exactly the plant is touched and what part of the plant actually moves, it is apparent that movement happens at a point different from the point of touch. So the information that a touch has occurred must be communicated. The plants also use electrical and chemical means to convey this information from cell to cell, but unlike in animals, there is no specialized tissue in plants for the conduction of information. Ultra Subha, each part is important. As such, we cannot say this one is important or that one is not important because, this time the paper was tough and it was more based on the competency based question. So, what I can suggest you just type on the Google previous year board papers, okay? And there will be a solution to it as well. So you can download all the previous year papers or you can also type previous year compartment papers. Generally, for the compartment, the questions are being taken from previous years only. Finally, again as in animals, some cells must change shape in order for movement to happen. Instead of the specialized proteins found in animal muscle cells, plant cells change shape by changing the amount of water in them, resulting in swelling or shrinking, and therefore in changing the shapes as shown to you in figure 6.4 means this one. 6.2.2 Movement due to growth. Some plants, like the pea plant, climb up other plants or fences by means of tendrils. These tendrils are sensitive to touch. When they come in contact with any support, the part of the tendril in contact with the object does not grow as rapidly as the part of the tendril away from the object. This causes the tendril to circle around the object and thus cling to it. More commonly, plants respond to stimuli slowly by growing in a particular direction. Because this growth is direction, it appears as if the plant is moving. Let us understand the type of movement with the help of an example. Activity 6.2. Fill a conical flask with water. Cover the neck of the flask with a wire mesh. Keep 2 or 3 freshly germinated bean seeds on the wire mesh. Take a cardboard box which is open from one side. Keep the flask in the box in such a manner that the open side of the box faces light coming from a window as shown to you in figure 6.5. After 2 or 3 days, you will notice that the shoots bend towards light and roots away from light. Now turn the flower so that the shoots are away from light and the roots towards light. Leave it undisturbed in this condition for a few days. Have the old parts of the shoots and roots changed direction? Are there differences in the direction of the new growth? What can we conclude from this activity? So here they have talked about the movement in response to the light. Environmental triggers such as light, gravity will change the directions that plant parts grow in. These directional or tropic movements can be either towards the stimulus or away from it. So, in two different kinds of phototropic movements, shoots respond by bending towards light, while roots respond by bending away from it. So, if anything is bending towards, so it is, we will be using the term positive. So if the shoot is bending towards light, we will be using positively phototropic. For roots, we have to use positively geotropic. How does this help the plant? In this activity, they just wanted to show that light is necessary for the growth of the plant. So whenever you are moving it, it is always the shoot that will grow towards light because shoots, they are always positively phototropic. Why they are so? Because when a plant is exposed to light, oxygen concentration becomes more in the shady part. So oxygen is generally more at the tip, but when a plant is exposed at the tip, there must be some region which is away from the light. That is why oxygen is more there. Because of the unequal distribution of oxygen at the tip, there is more growth in the shady part. That is why the plant bends towards the light. This is the reason. Plants show tropism in response to other stimuli as well. The roots of the plant always grow downwards, while the shoots always grow upwards and away from the earth. This upward and downward growth of roots and shoots, respectively, in response to the pull of the earth or gravity, is obviously geotropism. If hydro means water and chemo refers to chemicals, what would hydrotropism and the chemotropism mean? Can we think of examples of these kinds of directional growth movements? One example of chemotropism is the growth of pollen tubes towards ovules, about which we will learn more when we will examine the reproductive processes of living organisms. Let us now once again think about how information is communicated in the bodies of multicellular organisms. The movement of the sensitive plant in response to touch is very quick. The movement of sunflower in response to day or night, on the other hand, is quite slow. Growth related movements of plants will be even slower. Even in animal bodies, there are carefully controlled directions to growth. Our arms and fingers grow in certain directions, not haphazardly, so controlled movements can be either slow or fast. If fast responses to stimuli are to be made, information transfer must happen very quickly. For this, the medium of transmission must be able to move rapidly. Electrical impulses are an excellent means for this, but there are limitations to the use of electrical impulses. Firstly, they will reach only those cells that are connected by nervous tissue, not each and every cell in the animal body. Secondly, only an electrical impulse is generated in a cell and transmitted. The cell will take some time to reset its mechanism before it can generate and transmit a new impulse. In other words, cells cannot continuously create and transmit electrical impulses. It is thus no wonder that most multicellular organisms use another means of communication between cells, namely chemical communication. If instead of generating an electrical impulse, stimulated cells release a chemical compound, this compound would diffuse all around the original cell. If other cells around have the means to detect this compound using special molecules on their surfaces, then they would be able to recognize information and then even transmit it. This will be slower, of course, but it can potentially reach all the cells of the body. Regardless of the nervous connections, it can be done steadily and persistently. These compounds or hormones used by multicellular organisms for control and coordination show a great deal of diversity as we would expect. Different plant hormones help to coordinate growth, development, and responses to the environment. They are synthesized at places away where they act and simply diffuse to the area of action. Let us take an example that we have worked with earlier. Activity 6.2: when growing plants detect light, a hormone called auxin synthesized at the shoot tip helps the cells to grow longer. When light is coming from one side of the plant, auxin diffuses towards the shady part of the shoot. This concentration of auxin stimulates the cells to grow longer on the side of the shoot which is away from light. Thus, the plant appears to bend towards light. Another example of plant hormones are gibberellins, which, like auxins, help in the growth of the stem. Cytokinins promote cell division, and it is natural that they are present in greater concentration in the areas of rapid cell division, such as fruits and seeds. These are examples of plant hormones that help in promoting growth, but plants also need signals to stop growing. Abscisic acid is one example of a hormone which inhibits growth. Its effects include wilting of the leaves. In text questions, what are plant hormones? How is the movement of leaves of the sensitive plant different from the movement of a shoot towards light? Give an example of a plant hormone that promotes growth. How do auxins promote the growth of a tendril around a support? Design an experiment to demonstrate hydrotropism. Next page. The last concept that is given in this chapter is endocrine system. So here we will be talking about the hormones. How are such chemical or hormonal means of information transmission used in animals? What do some animals, for instance, squirrels, experience when they are in a scary situation? Their bodies have to prepare for either fighting or running away. Both are very complicated activities that will use a great deal of energy in controlled ways. Many different tissue types will be used and other activities integrated together in these actions. However, the two alternate activities like fighting or running are quite different. So here is a situation in which some common preparations can be usefully made in the body. These preparations should ideally make it easier to do either activity in the near future, or would this be or how would this be achieved? If the body design in the squirrel relied only on electrical impulses via nerve cells, the range of tissues instructed to prepare for the coming activity would be limited. On the other hand, if a chemical signal were to be sent as well, it would reach all cells of the body and provide the wide ranging changes needed. This is done in many animals, including human beings, using a hormone called adrenaline that is secreted from the adrenal gland. Look at figure 6.7 to locate these glands. Adrenaline is secreted directly into the blood and carried to different parts of the body. The target organs or the specific tissues on which it acts includes the heart. As a result, the heart beats faster, resulting in supply of more oxygen to our muscles. The blood to the digestive system and to the skin is reduced due to the con- contraction of muscles around small arteries in these organs. This diverts the blood to our skeletal muscles. The breathing rate also increases because of the contractions of the diaphragm and the rib muscles. All these responses together enable the animal body to be ready to deal with the situation. Such animal hormones are part of the endocrine system, which constitutes a second way of control and coordination in our body. Activity 6.3, look at figure 6.7, identify the endocrine glands mentioned in the figure. Some of these glands have been listed in table 6.1 and discussed in the text. Consult books in the library and discuss with your teachers to find out about other glands. Remember that plants have hormones that control their directional growth. What happens? What functions do animal hormones perform? On the face of it, we cannot imagine their role in directional growth. We have never seen an animal growing more in one direction or the other depending on light or gravity. But if we think about it a bit more, it will become evident that even in animal bodies, growth happens in carefully controlled places. Plants will grow leaves in many places on the plant body, for example, but if we do not grow fingers on our faces, the design of the body is carefully maintained even during the growth of the children. So here two diagrams are being given to you, it's telling you the location of endocrines. Beginning from head, you need to remember pineal gland in the brain, pituitary also in head. Hypothalamus, which regulates the pituitary, is located in the brain. It's a part of forebrain. In the neck, we have thyroid and parathyroid. We have pancreas close to stomach and intestine, adrenal gland on top of the kidney, because this is the male body. So here it would be having testes, whereas in the female, every other will be same endocrine gland, but additional ovaries will be there. So let's read about these endocrine glands. Let us examine some examples to understand how hormones help in coordinated growth. We have all seen salt packets which say iodized salt or enriched with iodine. Why is it important for us to have iodized salt in our diet? Iodine is necessary for the thyroid gland to make thyroxine hormone. Thyroxine regulates the carbohydrate, protein, and fat metabolism in the body so as to provide the best balance for growth. Iodine is essential for the synthesis of thyroxine. In case iodine is deficient in our diet, there is a possibility that we might suffer from goiter. One of the symptoms in this disease is a swollen neck. Can you correlate this with the position of the thyroid gland in figure 6.7? Sometimes we come across people who are either very short dwarfs or extremely tall giants, as Khali is. Have you ever wondered how this happens? Growth hormone is one of the hormones secreted by the pituitary. As its name indicates, growth hormone regulates growth and development of the body. If there is a deficiency of this hormone in childhood, it leads to dwarfism. You must have noticed many dramatic changes in your appearance as well as that of your friends as you approach 10 to 12 years of age. These changes associated with puberty are because of the secretion of testosterone in males and estrogen in females. Do you know anyone in your family or friends who have been advised by the doctor to take less sugar in their diet because they're suffering from diabetes? As a treatment, they might be taking injections of insulin. This is a hormone which is produced by the pancreas and help in regulating the blood sugar levels. If it is not secreted in proper amounts, the sugar level in the blood rises, causing many harmful effects. Do you know hypothalamus plays an important role in the release of many hormones? For example, when the level of growth hormone is low, the hypothalamus release growth hormone releasing factor, which stimulates the pituitary gland to release growth hormone. Next page. If it is so important that hormones should be secreted in precise quantities, we need a mechanism through which this is done. The timing and the amount of hormone released are regulated by feedback mechanisms. For example, if the sugar levels in blood rise, they are detected by the cells of the pancreas, which respond by producing more insulin. As the blood sugar level falls, insulin secretion is reduced. Activity 6.4 is telling you the hormones are secreted by endocrine glands and have specific functions. So, hormone is growth hormone released from pituitary and it stimulates the growth in all the organs. So, thyroid gland, here it should be thyroxine, regulates metabolism for body growth. Insulin, it is produced from pancreas, regulates blood sugar level. Testosterone is produced by the testes, so it produces the secondary sexual characteristics and help in producing the gametes, that is the sperms. Ovaries produces two hormones, estrogen and progesterone. So it helps in the development of female sex organs, regulates the menstrual cycle, etc. Adrenaline is produced by adrenal gland. So it brings about changes in the body. The heart beat faster, the pulse rate increases, and we sweat. Releasing hormones are produced by hypothalamus. It stimulates the pituitary gland to release hormones. So this is fill up kind of table. In text question, how does chemical coordination take place in animals? Why is the use of iodized salt advisable? How does our body respond when adrenaline is secreted into the blood? Why are some patients of diabetes treated by giving injections of insulin? Before we sum up this live, let's read the summary. Control and coordination are the functions of the nervous system and hormones in our bodies. The responses of the nervous system can be classified as reflex action, voluntary action, or involuntary action. The nervous system uses electrical impulses to transmit messages. The nervous system gets information from our sense organ and acts through our muscles. Chemical coordination is seen in both plants and animals. Hormones produced in one part of an organism move to another part to achieve the desired effect. A feedback mechanism regulates the action of the hormones. This is very important. In feedback mechanism, whenever there is an appropriate amount of hormone in the body, then a default cut is led in the body. If the hormone is less, it will be produced. If it is adequate, the production will be stopped. If this check fails, the hormone may be oversecreted or undersecreted, and oversecretion and undersecretion of any of the hormone leads to disease in the human beings. So I will be explaining this chapter, control and coordination, topic wise in the upcoming lives. If this seems helpful to you, consider subscribing. See you in the upcoming video. Thank you for connecting.